Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and it's Shane McConkey PMS week. And if you're anywhere near the Palisades area, this event is the most fun and most important event in skiing every year, hands down. I'll be on the mic and Snowblades will be on the mountain in the hopes of winning the coveted Golden Saucer. It's a face-melting day of debauchery, all to raise money in the name of the best to ever do it, Shane McConkey. I could go on and on about how fun this weekend is, but I'm going to focus on the show this week. While losing Shane was one of the heavier experiences in life for a lot of people, this week's podcast episode might be the heaviest in Powell movement history. Jess Kimura is one badass, tough-as-nails person, and she's managed to find success in the male-driven world of snowboarding while experiencing the hardest of times. Jess left home at 16 years old, found drugs and alcohol while starting her career in the fast food industry, all while killing it at snowboarding. And then came mental health issues, psych wards, losing snowboarding, finding snowboarding again, then finding love and losing love. And oh man, this episode is incredible and it's a heavy story. And when you're done listening to it, please check out Jess's movie, Learning to Drown. It's so good, and most people would never put themselves out there like that. And I've shared too much already about Jess's life and times. But know that Jess is not only a badass that has won Female Rider of the Year awards, among others, but more importantly, she's making a difference for women by creating some needed events with her Uninvited series that has positively helped shape so many careers. While what Jess has been through is tough, the real takeaway is how incredible what she's doing is. Before we get into the podcast, I want to thank you for listening and ask you to share my social media posts and please tell a friend about the show. It really does help it grow. Finally, please support the brands that make the podcast happen. They are High Cascade Snowboard Camp, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and Best Day Brewing. Now, let's talk with Jess Kimura. So, your story is such a heavy one. It's one thing to talk about on a podcast about it, but this whole podcast came together because you were going to speak at the Alpenglow Speaker Series in front of hundreds of people. Have you done that before, sharing such personal stuff in front of so many people?
Yeah, I guess. I've made a film that was pretty personal, and then, I don't know, I just share stuff in front of people.
What's almost scarier to you? Because I know you've made the film and you've done a lot of things where you've put yourself out there. But when you're standing in front of 500 people and telling the story, is it almost scarier to get in front of a crowd and tell everything about you compared to maybe getting in front of a gnarly feature and lining up for it?
Yeah, I mean, it was, but now, you know what's scariest for me is after I stand in front of a crowd of 500 people, having to do the cocktail part after that.
Just answer questions, random questions that people have for you?
No, just, I don't know. I feel like I can be socially awkward after those things because I just cried on stage in front of everyone. And then I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, you have a dog? Nice.
No, I can see that. And yeah, it's an awkward thing where you've just bared your whole soul to someone and then they want to just have a normal, regular conversation. And life ended up too busy to do that Alpenglow deal. And we had scheduled a podcast a few different times and we kept having to move it. Can you explain what happened to you a couple days before the last time we were going to originally record?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't be.
I was in Japan and that was my only time to snowboard this year, really, because things are so busy with the event and everything. And so I was filming for a project there and then we ended up extending the trip for longer, but then I forgot, I got a notification for the podcast. It's at 3 a.m, you have a podcast on Friday. And I was like, oh shit. So I hit you up asking to switch it up, which you nicely did. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. But I was actually talking about the time before that when you had a very scary moment in life that we had to postpone the podcast for.
Oh my God. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So I crashed my car kind of bad. I flipped it coming back from Baldface and it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I was lucky enough to have been following a friend of mine that we were driving with. And after she didn't see me for a while, she did turn around and come back for me. But I was stuck upside down and trying to figure out how to get out of the car and wondering if someone else was going to come along and smash me. But the craziest thing was The car flipped in a ditch beside the exact same car, year and color flipped in a ditch that had like flipped in a ditch, I don't know, earlier that day or the day before. They were like 50 feet apart.
Oh, no way. That's wild.
So crazy.
What, did you break your hand or break your arm or something like that?
I broke my hand, yeah, and like got a concussion. Like I hit my head on the side of the window, I think. So yeah, it was just kind of a bunch of crazy things at the same time, trying to deal with the insurance. And then I was trying to leave for Japan too, like a few days later. So try to figure out like what kind of cast I could get that'll fit inside my mitten, you know?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like life has never been easy for you, but growing up in Vernon, BC, it's mom, dad, you have a sister, and do things at least start out with a white picket fence and a happy childhood for you?
We didn't have a picket fence, but yeah, happy childhood. I mean, I feel like things are never easy for anyone, or like no one underneath has had an easy time in life, I don't think, but maybe like mine seems worse or more challenging because I like talk so openly about it in so many places. Maybe that's it. You know, other people just don't have the chance to share their story like I have. So I wouldn't say like my life's harder than others.
I've done about 370 of these podcasts, and I would say that just looking at your life, you have had a lot of situations that are very, very challenging that other people don't have, and we'll get into those. But getting into things, you get into gymnastics early on, and that's a great foundation for anyone who eventually spends their life hocking themselves through the air. And the way that you snowboard is the definition of like you have to pay to play. You leave it all out there wherever you are. Did you attack gymnastics that way too?
Yeah, definitely. I always laugh because I loved gymnastics because it would teach you how to do these crazy moves that seem impossible and super dangerous, but they break it down into small pieces to suddenly be able to do a backflip and land on a 4-inch wide balance beam, you know?
Yeah.
But they were really stringent with like the steps you take to get there, obviously for safety. But I was a loose cannon and I would try to do moves that I get in trouble because I wasn't allowed to try like that move yet. And then in a competition, I would just get so juiced up like during my routine and just huck it anyways, and then get in so much trouble after from my coach. But then when I started snowboarding, and that was like when I was kind of at the peak of my gymnastics, I realized that it was the exact same thing, except nobody was going to get mad at you for being impulsive or for trying something or going outside your comfort zone or maybe going outside your safety zone. So I had to come to a decision whether I was going to keep doing gymnastics or snowboard, and I chose snowboarding.
Well, outside of skate and snow and gymnastics, did you play any other sports or have any other hobbies that are worth noting?
I mean, I played every sport, love sports. I think when people are like, I don't want to be called an athlete, it's like, oh, fuck, I wish I was still an athlete. Like, that was so rad. Like, you're just hanging out with your friends on your team and you guys have this camaraderie and you get to travel together and stay in hotel rooms without your parents and fuck around and play pranks on your coach. And like, I don't know, just like, I love team stuff. I love being part of a team. I thrive in that environment. And maybe that's why, like, I found at some point snowboarding, like once I started to have a lot of success in it, like I got into like a difficult place because it was no longer a team thing. It was like so individual, and I felt, I don't know, empty about that. I didn't like that.
Well, there isn't the structure that you have in any team sports in snowboarding, although they're starting to get to be more and more every year, it seems like. But you start out, I think, as a skier, and Silverstar's the home resort, and it's a place known for pumping out some badass skiers like TJ Schiller, Josh Bibby, Joe Schuster. Did you know those dudes at all growing up?
Yeah, I mean, we had so many pro skiers come out of Silverstar, and like we had a border cross guy, Tom Velasek, who did really well. I guess Crispin Lipscomb was kind of from Silverstar, but I think originally from Ontario. But the difference in like the caliber of skiers that came out and were like in the X Games and were some of the best free skiers in the world out of Silverstar, like it was just kind of a crazy dichotomy. But they had like a really good freestyle ski club, but we snowboarders weren't in it. So I knew those guys. It's funny, some of those guys I went to elementary school with, like the Bibbies and the Schusters were both in my school. So I knew them as like kids in my school, but then I would like hear their names again when I saw them on the X Games and be like, whoa, crazy.
So crazy. These are the early days of the twin tip movement. And was that part of skiing cool to you, or was skiing just a way for you to get on the mountain?
Oh, you're talking about when I was skiing? Oh, fuck. I was skiing because my parents were like, we're going this week. Like, it was just like what you do. The hill was so close to town and it was so part of town. Like, it was just a tiny hill 15 minutes away from town. And that was what we did on the weekends. That was what, like, for PE class, they would take us up there. I never had any real passion for skiing.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought you meant like once I was snowboarding, but yeah, no, I didn't know that anyone was jumping in the air on their skis, or I don't know. I was just kind of like, oh, it's time to go up and get free French fries and like be alone with my friends skiing through the peanut trail through the woods, you know?
Yeah, totally. But you eventually start snowboarding. I think it's in middle school. Are you skateboarding at that point too?
No, well, I started snowboarding when I was like 13. Oh, I guess we don't have middle school in Canada, so.
It would be middle school here, but whatever.
Sorry, I was thinking like younger, but yeah, I started when I was like 13, 14, because all my skier friends had switched to snowboarding and like we had all grown up skiing since we were kids. So we were like fairly fast. And when they all started snowboarding, I was like, you guys are so slow. This is so annoying. Like, fine, I guess I'll get a snowboard. And I went to the ski swap and got like this is so sad in hindsight that I got rid of this board. It was $70, I remember, for the setup. It was a 158 Noah Selaznik, like with the skate tracks on the bottom. But it was so heavy and the bindings didn't stay done up. Like at that point, it was a pretty old board. And so I would go riding and I couldn't turn and my board would fall off halfway through the run. And like the bindings didn't even fit my feet at all. But I didn't really understand any of that. I just thought, man, snowboarding sucks. It's so hard. I can't keep up. Like, I really suck at this. So I would just like go throw it back in the locker and grab my skis and go back out. Yeah, I basically started it because of peer pressure. But then my mom came home one day with a board that fit me, with bindings that fit me, like stuff that was made for someone my size. You know, I was under 5 feet tall. And that first day, I remember like going off this side jump and my friends were like, let's try 360. And I just like hucked something and ended up doing like a back 5, no grab, super like boner in the air. I didn't land, but I remember like the smoothness of that feeling, how all of a sudden I wasn't fighting against anything anymore. And I was like free to express exactly what I wanted to. And the result was there. So that's why I started snowboarding.
And I'm guessing that's kind of around the time that you get into skateboarding too?
Yeah, it's kind of together.
And while I hate to stereotype people, but I know this is true when I was a kid, and I know it's true today because I have a kid, but the bad kids gravitate towards the skate park and bad shit happens there. Were you exposed to any of that bad shit when you were young at the skate park?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, I probably got way more into skateboarding around like 15, 16. Yeah, I was pretty much living at the skate park. Like, you know, that's just where your hangout was. And the one that we were at was called Polson Park. It's in this big park in Vernon, but there was like a lot of sketchy shit going down in this park. It was kind of like where a lot of homeless people lived, and there was definitely like a meth problem in Vernon at the time, and a lot of like crackheads running around and weird stuff happening. But we just like kind of thrived in that environment, I feel like, of just like skating and like staying there super late and seeing all this crazy shit go down. And it was just like another day. I feel like that stuff, like when you're removed from it, this is going to sound crazy, but when you're removed from it, it's like scary and dangerous. But when you're like in it and you're part of that, I don't want to say like part of that community, but just like on Skid Row, kind of, it doesn't feel as dangerous. It's like when you're trying to fight the ocean, if you're starting to drown, you know, like it's going to attack you. But if you just like go with the flow and float on your back, it's not as sketchy as it sounds.
So it's kind of like it's a community where people kind of look out for people, although everybody's not really looking out for everybody, but you feel safe if you're part of it.
Yeah, I think so. Wow, this is just, these are crazy statements I'm making. Sorry, it's early for me. I didn't sleep much last night. But yeah, I would say, I don't know. I loved that part of my life.
What's wild to me is it sounds like you come from a good family, and most kids who have that, even if they rebel, they don't move out of their house or drop out of school at 16. But that's what you did. And is it like a runaway situation? Or are you like, Mom and Dad, thank you for everything, but I'm out? How do you end up leaving the house so young?
I really felt like I needed to forge my own path from like a really young age. And I felt compelled to like choose a hard path. I gotta say, like, that sounds really fucked up. Like, I did not come from a rich family, but my parents weren't crackheads, you know?
Yeah, it was just like a normal family.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people don't have that choice, you know, to be like, I'm going to leave home or I'm going to stay. Like, some people just don't have a home. And I just want to like say that I do realize that. I think I really wanted to be independent and completely like in control of my life and the good things that would happen and the bad things that would happen and like the path I wanted to take. And I just felt so constrained by, I don't know, like just society and the school system and like everything that I was like, I have all these dreams and all these ideas and everyone just says they're bad and dumb and not going to work. And I'm going to go see if they're going to work, you know, like with snowboarding and trying to be a pro snowboarder outside of the constraints of like FIS and the World Cup series and all that kind of, I don't know. I just like really wasn't at the time, like really wasn't getting along with my parents. And I was working enough. Like I worked at Wendy's like a lot. I was working enough to, I just moved out when I was 16, I guess.
It sounds like you ended up living with a boyfriend, and I'm going to assume that if he's dating a 16-year-old and he has his own place, that can't be a good situation. What was that life like?
I think he was only like a year older than me, but he was just in a, this is so funny. I haven't thought of this stuff in so long. I'm kind of taken off guard by these questions.
Sorry.
But I like it. No, I like it because I like being uncomfortable. So he was kind of, I don't know, like I was hanging out with not the kind of crowd your average parents want you to hang out with.
The skatepark crew.
Yeah, the skatepark crew, the Polson Park dirtbags. But I don't know, it was just like, I loved like the punk scene, the skateboard scene and that whole vibe. And I don't know, like those were my friends. And I felt like if they're having to live on their own, then I should too. And yeah, I had a boyfriend. He was kind of troubled. He was into drugs and we just got a place together. I remember it was a basement suite in kind of a sketchy part of town, but it was $375 a month. It was a 2-bedroom.
So you end up living with this boyfriend, and then you end up at the alternative school, it sounds like, the school for the derelicts. How do you end up at that school in the first place? And then is there any real education, or do you learn how to do bad shit?
It is what you make it, I think. And I wasn't there to do bad shit. I was there to be able to graduate or try to graduate or continue with school while I was trying to take my own path and trying to snowboard as much as possible.
So you picked this one direction that most parents wouldn't be too stoked on. How about your sister? Did she choose a normal path in life?
Well, she definitely was not doing what I was doing. I mean, she chose a different path, a normal, straighter path, maybe.
Okay. And so you didn't go to a regular school, so I'm sure there's no dances or any of the normal stuff that kids do, which makes me wonder, did you ever do any girly girl shit, or have you always been kind of a tomboy?
I guess back then it was called a tomboy, like just taking risks and scraping my knees. And I just hated the stereotypes that I would feel like society was kind of pushing on us as girls. Like you have to look good and like the toys for us are Barbies and a fucking kitchen set. And the guys get to go like throw army men with parachutes off like a bridge. And I was like, no, I want to do that. You know, I want to be in Boy Scouts. I don't want to be in Girl Guides. I just thought that was all so lame and I hated it. And I think that's why too, like, I just want to say like the whole thing with like moving out and like dropping out of school, like I just felt like everything that, I don't know, society was telling me I needed to be, like I intrinsically knew I needed to like get away from that and do my own path because I didn't want to be like a victim of that system essentially. Like, and I say victim as in getting on a path where I live the whole rest of my life according to these ideals that are bullshit and cause people strife.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I want you to buy all of your ski and snowboard gear from Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Why Peter Glenn? Well, first and foremost, they're the little guy who's been getting people out on snow for over 65 years. They aren't trying to take over an industry by making a ton of branded products that compete with the brands they already sell. They're not trying to get you to stay at a hotel or sell you a vacation. Peter Glenn is about making sure you purchase the right products to ensure that you're going to have the most fun on the hill. And they have all the brands, all the products, and incredible deals both in-store and online. While other retailers focus on algorithms and AI, Peter Glenn is all about having the most knowledgeable staff that understands what you need. And if you've been following them on Instagram, they've been dropping some incredible pro tips that will make your time on the hill more enjoyable. At the end of the day, people have trusted Peter Glenn since 1958 because of their proven track record and all-around passion for snow and beyond. So if you ski, snowboard, inline skate, wakeboard, water ski, or need outerwear for your adventure, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports is your one-stop shop, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50, a hassle-free return policy, and they price-match reputable dealers. So please support this podcast and buy your stuff over at peterglenn.com. Next up, it's Elan Skis. I started telling you about Elan building a cult following in the States about 3 years ago. And if you're like me and heading up to the mountain on a weekly basis, I know you've been seeing more Elans. There's a reason for that. People who ski Elans notice that skiing on award-winning products made in what is considered the best factory in the world will make them a better skier. The product they put into the marketplace is second to none. I mean, Elan's a company that also makes luxury yachts, and they don't cut corners on materials or production. The difference in quality is noticeable. Walk up to any ski wall and compare the craftsmanship of an Elan ski to everything else on the wall. You'll see a difference in the fit and finish, but the most important difference is how they'll perform on snow. That's why Elan's been winning a ton of awards at the magazine tests, because they really do ski better. If you want to have more fun on the mountain this season, get on an Elan. You can find out about all things Elan over at elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, and if you haven't been hearing a lot about Stanley lately, you must be living under a rock. They've absolutely blown up in 2023, and everyone is talking about them. I've been telling you about how incredible their products are at keeping your drinks hotter and colder than anyone else's for about 7 years now. I mean, they invented the category in 1913, and while they always have done well, the world now knows that if you don't have a Stanley, you don't have the best. And I love having the best. Personally, I use Stanley pint glasses every single day, and I swear by them. And my wife and so many others can't live without their Stanley quenchers. And recently, I've integrated Stanley food storage devices into my ski routine. Instead of buying $20 burgers, we bring our food to the mountain and it stays piping hot in our Stanleys. And I end up saving about $70 a weekend not buying food. While that's rad, what's even radder is that Stanley offers Powell Movement listeners their biggest discount that they make available to the public. I'm going to save you 30% on all your Stanley products. Here's what you need to do to get that discount. Head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and at checkout, enter the code SNOW30. That's all caps and the number 30 with no spaces, and you'll save that 30%. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. We're not going to talk that much about snowboarding during the podcast, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. And this is around the Form 8 time when everything in snowboarding was really, really cool. Everything was changing and it's taken over. And were you into the culture of the sport at that point?
So we were into it, but as like base level fans, I had no idea that anyone could be a pro snowboarder. Or like, I just thought that it was like these like celebrities and then us watching their videos and dreaming about getting an autograph, you know, like I wasn't like in the scene. We didn't really have a scene. It was basically like the kids who snowboarded at the resort that were into like riding the park and building jumps and hanging out. Like, I don't know, that was just some of the best times of my life. Those days, like waiting for sunny, like spring slushy days where we could just huck anything we wanted and eating fries in the snow with our friends. Basically, it all comes down to fries, you know, French fries.
Yeah, totally. So like the Shannon Dunns and the Tina Bassets of the world, they weren't really like inspirations to you back then. It was more like, hey, if I see them in a video, that's cool. But it's more about just being with my friends and eating fries.
Yeah, I mean, at the very beginning point, because I didn't even really know about videos so much. I remember I had technical difficulties, and we're talking like the first 2 years that I was snowboarding here. And after that, I would go and like get all the catalogs from the shops to try to see any pictures I could of girls riding, you know? So I did, yeah, my first board was a Shannon Dunn Pro model. I didn't know that when I got it because my mom just bought it as like a used demo for me and altered the course of my life by doing that. But yeah, I would see those girls riding in, but it was always like photos or something. Like there was very little video, and I was really hungry to see anything I could of them. So that's why I would always like hoard the catalogs. Like the Burton catalog always had girls in it.
And that thing was so big back then. Remember how it was like 300 pages, it seemed like.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love that catalog.
And then when you think about girls or boys, after your first couple years when you get into the culture, whose riding really had an influence on you during those formative years?
Tara Takitis, for sure, because she was the first one that I saw in the Mac Dog videos really doing the same stuff as the guys, like hitting the same jumps and hitting the same, like, those videos back then were all about these like crazy park rail features. There was like this whale thing or like those crazy like battleship rails that were like 20 feet off the ground or crazy rainbow rails, you know? And so all the pros that year in that video were hitting those rails. So you were able to like directly see like, holy shit, she's going back to Sev on this thing or whatever, you know? Like at first it was just Tara. That's all I saw. And then Jana Mayan I saw and I was like, oh, this is it. Like this chick is fucking badass. And she, like, her style was so sick. She just rode, I don't know, like she was my hero for sure. I think like the thing about Jana was she didn't have that like more girly vibe. And I'm not like bashing on the girly vibe. Like I feel like that's really important to have because it gets a lot of girls into the sport who otherwise would find it unapproachable. But I would consider myself looking for people who are unapproachable to have as my role models because I just like, I don't know, there's just something different about Jana in the same way as I got further, like why I thought Desiree Melanson and Laura Hadar were so sick because they just weren't doing that like bubblegum vibe, you know, that
they weren't afraid to bleed, it seemed like.
Yeah.
You know, and like kind of the way you
Which
ride.
is ironic because everyone of us was bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they put off that image of they're going to go back and do it 100 times until they get it. And not that the other girls didn't, but they do put off that image of just hardcore.
Yeah, totally. And I think like just to credit the girls that weren't putting out that image, like you have a dream, like you're going to do whatever you have to make it happen. And if at the time the only feedback you're getting from the industry is you have to like look this way or kind of appear like you have this attitude or like look like it's so fun and wear bright pink outerwear, whatever it is, like fuck, like, or if they enjoyed that kind of thing, like I just don't want to like harp on the girls who were not the hardcore ones. I'm just saying for me, it was refreshing for me to see that at the time.
You're such a politician because I like that you're making sure you're not offending the girls who don't have the style that was maybe what you gravitated towards as a kid, but then you're also giving props to the girls that did have that style. But everybody has those people that they love and they want to be like, and then other people that they respect, but it's not their style of riding. I think that's kind of where you're going.
Yeah, but I think like I'm not saying it to try to not offend the other girls. I think it's more just like getting older and looking back on things in general and stuff that I used to be like, oh, that's so lame, you know? And now I'm like, oh, wait, I kind of understand why it was like that. And then also why I didn't want to gravitate towards that, you know? Like, I don't know. Nobody's like bad, honestly. Like nobody's like bad or dumb or like lame, really, because I don't know. There's just different circumstances for everyone. And maybe like now in this day and age, like the girls have more of a choice to be able to be who they want. Like the industry was really constrictive back then. So I think at the time I didn't see that whole picture and I was just like, yo, fuck the girly girls. Like I'm going to bleed like Laura Hadar, you know?
Yeah. So you're a competitor at that point. It was like pipe and border cross. And when I think of you these days, it's like you have a purpose of creating a platform for women who may not have had one. And it's almost like you're selfless. But back when you were coming up, when you think of your contest riding, did you have that super competitive mentality of like, I'm going to win?
I wanted to win, but I wasn't very good a lot of the time. I think like I didn't want to win, but I wanted to change something about that event. For example, when I was doing half pipe contests, I remember like the only trick the girls would throw at that point was like a frontside 360 on the front side wall. And I was like, I want to throw a 5. I want to huck a 5. I want to do a 5 because I know it, like no one's ever seen a girl do a 5 like at this hill, you know?
Right.
Or if I was in a slopestyle contest, I was like, I'm going to do a flip. I'm going to do a flip. Like no one's ever seen a girl do a flip. Like I fucking got this, you know? But I those tricks, like I didn't necessarily have dialed a bit or at all, you know?
You're praying almost?
Yeah. And that's what I wanted. Like, it wasn't like a competitive drive. It was just like a drive for progression and to like rock the boat, I think. Yeah.
And being that you were working at Wendy's, do you have money to travel to different contests, or are you pretty much stuck doing shit close to home?
Yeah, I was just stuck doing shit close to home and like literally sleeping in the car, doing whatever, like getting one lift ticket between me and my friends and then dropping it off the chairlift in a glove, so everyone can get up for one, and then hiking the rest of the day.
So you were that broke when you were coming up?
Oh yeah, I was more than broke.
But you did make it to nationals. And was that one of those trips where you barely have enough money to make it and you're going as this ragtag kid that nobody knows and then you're able to make a name for yourself there?
No, that nationals, the reason that I was able to go was because it was at the hill that was 45 minutes from my house. The nationals would go like West Coast, East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, like alternating years. And that year it was on the West Coast. So I was able to go for half pipe. And that was a year that I won the junior nationals or something. And then the other year that I went, it was on the East Coast. And I was just doing border cross that year. It was a few years later because I just was like, I don't know, like I wasn't like after it, or I didn't even understand like how things worked really. But that one was in Quebec, and me and my best friend, Carla, had both qualified for it. So we did like fundraising basically in town. Like we did a hot dog sale at Safeway and raised a bunch of money. And then our friends were all like in different bands. And so we put on like a punk show at a bar that they donated like the liquor sales that night to us. And like we did raffles and we just did whatever we could to try to raise money to go. And we were able to go. So that was like the two nationals that I did go to.
How about your attitude at this time? Are you this punk kid who's giving the middle finger to everyone, smoking cigarettes and drinking beers, and pretty much like the female equivalent to Rankwit?
I mean, I was upset at, I guess, like society at the time. That sounds so like an Avril Lavigne song or something. But I just was like, yo, fuck, like they want us to be all, I don't know. Like I was just like, why is this whole thing with like girls and athletes having to be like this certain way? Like, fuck that, like I didn't work my ass off selling hot dogs and whatever to come here and have someone tell me like you can't smoke cigs in the starting gate, which is so funny looking back. Like, what a fucking skid.
That happened? You'd smoke cigs in the starting gate and people would give you looks?
Oh, fuck yeah. I mean, not looks. I mean, like after I won the North American Cup, I like lit a cig. That was like broadcast on TV. Like they straight up like pulled that out of my mouth and
physically
yelled.
Took it from you?
Yeah.
What do you look like back then? Are you a total punk rock kid with different color hair and look all crazy? Or when people looked at you walking down the street, what would they think?
I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe had blue hair or usually had like a gab on my face from hitting it on the ground or something.
Yep.
I don't know. I was just like a skate kid,
Okay. And then at one of the nationals that you went to, you do well enough to get an invite to a World Cup in Switzerland. And when you hear that you've done well enough to compete in a contest in another country, does your mind just blown?
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. That whole thing has such sad connotation to me, like when I think about it. Not like the fact that I was excited to go, but just like I said, I didn't have rich parents, and I did come to them being like, I got this opportunity. I got asked to go to Switzerland to do this border cross World Cup. Like, this could be it. It was after I like won the North American Cup. But again, like I was able to go to that North American Cup because it was in Vancouver, an hour away. Like I would just take advantage of when the contests were close, And so my parents took out a fucking loan to be able to send me to Switzerland. And like, I felt really guilty for that, I think. And then like, I realized when I was there that I wasn't actually like invited to go. It was more just like in order to subsidize the trip for the Snowboard Association, like they needed to fill a certain number of spots. And so they didn't actually particularly want me to go. It was just, I had technically qualified, and the coach he was so gnarly. Like he was like saying like I didn't have any technical skill, and I don't know, really like came down on me. Like I felt, and obviously like, yeah, I was not the kind of athlete they were looking for to have as part of their group, but like that was just a really like lonely and shitty trip because I felt like the fucking outcast of that group. I just felt like such a loser and like, I don't know, it was just really shitty. It was like being the new kid at school and like literally everyone hates you and doesn't want you there, but you have to be there because it's school. And just like dreading the every day going out. And anyways, the coach really like shook my confidence because I had never thought about like, wow, I have no technical skill or like I'm not a good snowboarder. Like it wasn't that I thought I was a good snowboarder. It was more just like I was just going intuitively at all these races and trying to go the fastest and cross the finish line first and maybe like have some style going down. And my first race, I think I ate shit really bad and it was really icy and I hit my head really bad, got a really bad concussion and like bruised my vertebrae in my neck. I got helivaced out essentially. And that was in Switzerland. So I got flown to Austria and I was in a country where I didn't know anyone. I didn't have like at the time, like we didn't have cell phones. I didn't have a calling card to like call my parents and tell them what happened. So I was just alone in this other country that the coach or the organization, like they never reached out to be like, hey, you're at this hospital. Like this is how we're going to get you back to the crew or whatever. It was just nothing, silence. And I had happened to meet these two guys from Austria that were snowboarders at Blunt Brothers in Vancouver, which was this like weed cafe before weed was legal. Like I just met them and they're like, oh, we love snowboarding and we're from Austria. If you ever come there, here's our number. So I like go into my notebook and like call this guy and he's like, oh my God, yeah. He drove to Germany to get me. Oh no, they were from Switzerland. Yeah. So he's the one that brought me back to Switzerland and I just stayed with them until I left and they dropped me off at the airport. I never heard from the coach or the organization again. Like it was so fucked.
Yeah, that's so crazy that they would do that to you. Just leave you there alone, being like a young kid with, I mean, maybe not that young, but being a kid who doesn't really know what's going on in the world and being stuck in another country where you don't speak the language. That's fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was 18, like I just turned 18. And yeah, I mean, that was fucked up. And so I think that sealed the deal for me on organized, structured, competitive snowboarding and coaches and all that bullshit.
Do you come home with like the weight of the world on your shoulders because now you have this huge medical bill that you have to pay?
Yeah. Oh my God, that helicopter bill. I remember it was like several $1,000s. The collections agency was like calling me and I was like, there's no way that I can pay this. But I don't even think I told my parents everything that happened there or that I had this bill because I had travel medical insurance, but it didn't cover like helicopter evacuations. It was just the heli bill that I had to pay. And yeah, I came back like really like ashamed and like feeling like a failure.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that if your parents are taking out a loan to kind of make this dream happen for you, and you probably you might have a great relationship with them, I don't know, but you don't live with them at home from when you're 16 on. So that's a different thing. So they really go out on a limb to make sure that you can go do this thing. And then you end up getting hurt. You have this huge medical bill on top of it. You're 18 years old. You come back and you realize that you're going to have to sell like 7,000 Baconators to be able to pay for this helicopter bill, which is scary as shit. And is this about the time where, it might have been always going on, I don't know, but is this when like the battle with mental health first starts, or is it the first time that you realize that something's going on in your head?
Yeah, I think maybe even like on that trip after like everything that was happening with the group and just feeling like so alone and scared. I think that was when like the anxiety thing first really kicked in. Sorry, this is
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. This is what I do. I told you I fucking cry in front of people. It's fine. Made a career out of it. But and then I got home and I just sunk like, and I think it was probably like the concussion too, like dealing with the fallout of that and just feeling like I totally failed and like fucked up my only chance. And even if I had done good, like nobody likes me anyways, like it was a sad time.
You're just spiraling?
Yeah, pretty much. And then like I'm broke. I am struggling to pay my rent. I don't want to tell my parents, hey, maybe I need to move back home because I don't know, I already like fucked up.
And that would be admitting another failure?
Yeah, it wasn't that I didn't want to like admit a failure. It was more just like I already asked too much.
It's time for my final sponsor break, and I can't tell you how much I love my gear from Outdoor Research. When I signed on with OR, I knew there wasn't an outerwear brand on the market that performs as well as what OR is developing. That's what happens when you test your gear in the absolutely terrible conditions that we can get here in the Pacific Northwest. Days in the mountains are always more fun when you're warm and dry, and I know my OR gear will always deliver that. I'll tell you, on cold days, I live in my cold front hoodie, which is hands down the warmest and most stylish puffy I've ever owned. And then when I get on snow, my snow crew jacket and pants are not only warm, but it's one of those fits where if you don't see me ski, I look like a pro. I'm so impressed with the style that OR has been bringing to the table lately. And off snow, they sent me some Feroci pants, which are now my daily drivers. Think stylish, lightweight, packable, do-anything pants with the right amount of zippered pockets and stretch to be the only pant that you'll ever need. I've been loving OR products since I bought my first OR rain jacket in 2000. And really, if you missed out on using my old discount code for OR products, well, I'm working on getting you a new code, but I can't promise anything. Sometimes you snooze, you lose. So check back for that. And in the meantime, head on over to outdoorresearch.com and check out why they're one of the fastest growing brands in snow and beyond. My next ad comes from the crew at We Are Camp. I'm talking about the best ski, snowboard, and skate camps in the U.S. High Cascade is the snowboard camp, Windell's is the ski camp, and Seek is the skate camp. And if you want to be a great parent, I highly recommend signing your kid up for a week or two of camp. I can tell you from firsthand experience that going to Seek Skate Camp helped my kid in so many ways. Not only did he get so much better at skateboarding, he was able to make lifelong friends that have shared interests, and that's a hard thing to do these days. And whenever the subject of camp comes up, my kid lights up and starts selling it to whoever's listening because it was that fun for him. On top of all that, my kid has never been more appreciative and stoked. I mean, he's a high schooler, and sending him to camp helped make Ange and I cool again in his eyes. And now we can hold it over his head. If you want to go to camp again, buddy, you need to get good grades. And so far, that approach is working, and I know you can use that approach too. I'll tell you more about the camps in the coming months, but for now, head on over to windells.com, highcascade.com, or seekskatecamp.com to find out all the details and reserve a spot. You only have your kid for a limited time, and sending them to camp will make them love you a lot more. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. If you haven't heard of Best Day, they are hands down the best tasting non-alcoholic beer on the market. I enjoy Best Day for so many reasons. The flavor is the most important. I swear by the hazy IPA, the Kolsch, and the Belgian White. They all taste just as good or better than their alcoholic cousins. And I'll tell you, while I haven't quit drinking, when I go to the bar, after 3 or 4 beers, I usually feel like it's time for me to head home, and everyone thinks I'm lame. But lately, I have a new routine. I'll have a Best Day every 3rd beer, and it makes my night last twice as long. And we all know lasting longer is better. If you want to have your best day or night ever, or just enjoy a few cold ones at Après, grab a Best Day, and you can forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, and forget about getting in trouble on the way home. To see all the flavors and order some beer, head on over to bestday.com. And if you're flying Alaska, you can now get a Best Day Kolsch at 30,000 feet. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. How long till you see a doctor and you find yourself on a shit ton of meds? And what do those things do to your body and your mind?
Well, when I got back, like I said, that anxiety was really bad. And I was probably dealing with things by getting high or doing drugs or whatever. And I just remember my stomach hurt all the time and I couldn't eat. And I just didn't know what it was. And back then you didn't talk about anxiety. Anxiety was just a mood back then. It wasn't a actual thing that could affect you physically. And I was just going to the doctor being there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And he was never yeah, cool. This is what's happening to you. It was more just oh, you need this prescription and that prescription. And then finally it went to psychiatric medication where he just gave me a stack of these sample packs of this antidepressant. And I didn't know anything about it. There was no warning or explanation besides here's these sample packs. And I didn't even know I couldn't actually afford this medication once the sample packs ran out. I started taking it. It was a really gnarly SSRI. Knowing that now after years of being on antidepressants and learning more about everything, it made me feel really nauseous. So I took it for a couple weeks, maybe a month or something. And then I was just fuck this. This is making me feel awful. I'm just going to stop taking it. And anyone who knows about this stuff knows that you can't just stop taking an antidepressant cold turkey that will throw you into a crisis state of psychosis, and that's what happened. But I didn't know that that's what was happening. I just thought, oh my God, I'm going crazy. I need to die. Literally, it was just like, I just need to not be alive. This is so fucked up. Like, there's something wrong with me. And kind of like living in a constant panic attack for like days and days. And finally, like, did tell my mom what I was feeling like. And she like got some, like, I got some like medical intervention, kind of like went to the hospital. And then they put me into this program but it was never like, hey, did you take this very strong SSRI medication for a month and then stop dead taking it? Oh, you did? Well, this is what happens when, like, no one ever said, it was never identified that that's what had caused this. It was just straight up like, oh, you're developing schizophrenia. This is the age it usually kicks in. Like, you have psychosis and we're going to intervene. So I was like put in this program, like medicated so hard, like tranquilizers, antipsychotics, like so many antidepressants. Like, I was just a zombie and my life just stopped. And I was in this program for kids with psychosis, you know, and I was just looking like these kids were really, really, really sick with schizophrenia and other like serious mental disorders. And I'm fucking in a house where we like aren't allowed knives, but we have to like make dinner together and sit down together. And I was just like, this is my life now. Like, I never even thought like something maybe happened to lead me to this. It was more just like, this is who I am now. I am a person with schizophrenia. I am living in a group home. I am never going to snowboard again, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, it's not like they're going to give you a day pass to go snowboarding. So how long do you totally stop riding for? And I mean, I'm sorry to even ask more questions about this because you're upset, but does it make you spiral further because you can't ride?
Yeah, I wasn't even like really thinking about riding because I was just so tranquilized. And like, I mean, like, I'm sure I thought about it. I do remember saying to the psychiatrist, who was a fucking asshole, by the way, but I remember saying, or like my mom asked him in one of the meetings, like, she previously like wanted to be a pro snowboarder, like, when could she get back to snowboarding? And he was like, oh no, like, you don't understand what this is. This is for life. She'll be lucky if she works a normal job again. You know, like, that's the goal here. You need to reframe your goals. Like, and I remember sitting there being like, wow, like, this fucking sucks, you know, like.
And just hearing that from a medical professional, it's got to be like even worse. Just like, what the fuck are you saying? I'm going to be like this forever?
Yeah.
Huh. How are you able to get yourself unmedicated and out of that facility? Because we don't need to talk about this anymore, but we got to get you out of there before we can go on with your career.
I just eventually was like, there's something wrong here. And I think I like, as they put me on all those other antidepressants and they were like, oh, we need to change this one, but we can't change it suddenly because did you know that causes all this stuff? I'd read all the papers that came with it. And I was like, wait a minute, this is what fucking happened. Like, this is how I got here in the first place. Like, fuck this. And so I just slowly started going off of like the tranquilizers, at least, and the antipsychotics, because those were like the most debilitating. And then, yeah, like eventually got out of that program and I saw a new psychiatrist and he was like, you know what I think? Like, I just remember this. He's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I don't think you have schizophrenia and I don't think that you have psychosis. I think that this was an event and you do have problems with anxiety and depression. Like, we're going to adjust your medication to be like as minimal as it can so you have the least side effects, but like, you don't need to be on tranquilizers. You don't need to be on antipsychotics. And so eventually I was just back to just being on antidepressants and was like, all right, let's go fucking snowboard, you know?
So you get your life back, and while it does take a few years for you to establish yourself, sometimes strange coincidences happen in life. And can you tell me the story of picking up a hitchhiker who played a role in changing your life in snowboarding?
So my best friend Carla, that we had done the hot dog sale together, she moved to Banff and was going to school in Banff or like doing some program there. And so I was just always hanging out in Banff. Like, I would just drive there and stay at her place. And there was like an event or something going on at COP, or was that Banff? I think I was heading to COP. I don't remember exactly, but I saw a hitchhiker and I was like, I remember like never having rides and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna pick up this hitchhiker. I think he had a snowboard too, but I was like, he's kind of like this older dude, you know?
Yeah.
But I pick him up and it's fucking Pat Bridges. But I didn't know that at the time, really. Like, I mean, I read the magazine and I had heard the name like Pat the Eye Bridges, but I didn't know till like after that was Pat Bridges, you know?
Yep.
So we went to COP and there was a wall ride there and I was trying hand plants on it. And I didn't know that Pat Bridges is like the fucking fiender of all hand plants, you know, like he got pretty juiced and then he invited me to SuperPark after that. But I didn't tell him that I actually had reached out to him before after I had like won the peanut butter rail jams and been like, hi, my name is Jessica Kimura, and I would love to come to Women's SuperPark. Here's my resume of rail jam results recently. And he hit me back being like, yeah, this isn't a rail jam. Like, good luck. And then I met him and then he was like, you should come to SuperPark. And I was like, here's my email. And I was like, wait a minute. What the fuck? So he did invite me and I was like, yes, I'm fucking in, you know? And that was going to be my big break, you know?
Yeah, totally.
A few weeks before that, I like ate shit really bad in a slopestyle contest and broke my ribs and ripped my liver open like really badly and was in ICU for 2 weeks, I think, and couldn't go to SuperPark.
Which is a total bummer, but what's more serious is the liver injury. And you like to throw back some beers and have a good time. When you tear your liver apart, did a doctor say that you have to stop drinking, or is it something where you can do that again?
Well, I mean, I didn't give two shits about the liver thing. All I cared about, I remember like being like, Mom, bring me a phone. I have to phone like a different doctor for a different second opinion because I have to go to SuperPark. You don't understand. And I remember trying to explain to the doctor like how important it is that I go to fucking SuperPark, you know, like this is never going to happen again. This is my only opportunity. And they were like, no. So I really was not thinking at all about, like, I was just like, get me out of here. This is stupid. But yeah, you can't drink. You can't, I don't know. They were like, your liver is vulnerable now. You can't like snowboard or skateboard because if you fall and it like, this is like a large laceration and they don't sew it back together. It has to like gel itself back together. But then there's like a weakness there. I don't really know. I obviously wasn't listening because all I was thinking was, how do I convince them that my liver is strong enough to go to SuperPark?
Right.
But yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, so that sucks. And then the next move that you have is to Whistler, and it's like the mecca of skiing and snowboarding. And at this point is like the idea, I'm going to move into the closet, I'm going to ride as hard as I possibly can, get clips and photos, and somehow make it happen? Like, are you still hell-bent on being a pro snowboarder?
I mean, I think like my plan before the liver thing was to like go to SuperPark and then there I would go pro because fucking Jamie Lynn would be there and he'd be like, you're magically pro now. I don't know, you know, like whatever I had in my mind is my dream. And then I was going to move to Whistler and the doctors were like, you can't snowboard this year, you dumbass, you know, like if you fall and re-lacerate your liver, you could die or whatever. You can't do anything where you could fall. And so I was like, I really loved skating transition back then. And I was like, well, I can just go like, there's that 6 snake run up there. Like I can just skate and like stay on the ground. Even though I was a wrecking ball on a skateboard, especially skating transition, because I just like try to go as fast as I can until I just like smashed into a wall, you know? But in my mind, I was like, this is what I'm going to do because I don't want to like give up on my dream to move to Whistler. And I've secured this closet. It's only $500 a month. And yeah, you can't stand up in it because it's actually a crawl space closet, but it's sweet. So yeah, I went there and like, I feel like I like got more healed, or at least I told myself. And then I had like another ultrasound, like, I don't know, months and months later, they were like, okay, yeah, your liver's healing, or like we can see the scar tissue happening. So then I, was like, I'm going to still do this thing of being a pro snowboarder. And I think I was like, when I moved to Whistler, I was like 23 or something, which is like way past the age then that you could even be like, I remember people being like, oh yeah, people are retiring at 23, you know? And so everyone was like, what are you doing? You're not gonna like, just quit it. Like go back to school, you know, like you need to really decide what you're going to do with your life kind of thing. And I just didn't want to give up on that dream.
No. And I think through hucking yourself at the Whistler skate park, you get your opportunity to film that first year. And is it pretty much when folks see that you have some talent on a skateboard and zero respect for your body that they can only imagine how you'll do filming with doing what you're best at?
Yeah, I mean, at the Whistler like King of the Bowl series, I think I met Dave Rouleau. His thing was like the Narcor films, and he was stoked and asked me to like film for their thing. And I was like, oh my God, like he gave me the t-shirt and like the stickers. And I was just like, oh my God, I've made it. Like, this is my chance. And so I would like go film with them whenever I could. And when I couldn't, like at the time, I couldn't actually afford a season's pass. So I was just riding street spots in Whistler or going to Vancouver when it snowed with those guys and trying to film what I could. But I did have my own camera that was just like a, you know, a point and shoot photo camera, but it did take video. So I would just put that on a tripod and go to a spot and like kind of film myself. just to make sure that I could get extra shots for the video when it came out.
When I say you have no respect for your body, I mean it. Between skate and snow, I've seen this behavior before, and it always comes with carnage. And with you, how many concussions do you think you've had over the years?
Too many to count, but like an embarrassingly, like, why the fuck were you still riding amount. I think now I'm like, oops, should have made better decisions, but I don't know. I think there's this point of like these kids that skate and snowboard that are really like hocking themselves and like keep getting up. Like, yes, it's not the smart path to take. Yes, there are going to be like future repercussions, but I think it's also like, it was also this kind of taking back of the autonomy of my own body, being like, it's mine. I can fucking bleed if I want. Like, I can fall. Like, you don't think a girl can fall. Like, I'm going to do what I want with my body, and you don't have any fucking say over it. Like there was that element to it, I think, like looking back on a psychological level. But I mean, you can also just have autonomy over your own body without smashing it into the ground repeatedly until your cartilage and brain cells are gone.
Yeah, but I think about like with you and the way that you ride, is there any way to minimize the risk in the way that you ride? Or is that something that would change the way you ride totally and that's not in the cards?
I think there's probably like a middle ground in there. I feel like even after I would get a shot back then, I would be like, oh, well, that doesn't really count because it was too easy. And then I would just try something crazy and harder that I couldn't do and like really eat shit and then be like, okay, yeah, now I can go home. I don't know. I just felt like maybe like because I tried so hard to make it for so long and didn't get anywhere that I like had it in my head. Like, it's my fault. I'm not suffering enough. I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not hardcore enough. Like, maybe if I do this one more thing, like maybe this will be what helps me make it. Like, I think it was just like also a sense of desperation. And then also like, fuck, I've really gotten myself into a hole. I'm old enough now to have credit cards that are completely maxed out. The collection agencies are calling me again. I probably still haven't paid for that fucking helicopter bill. Like, I'm fucked and living less than paycheck to paycheck and living in a closet. And like, I don't know how I'm going to make it except to try harder where I'm trying to make it,
Yeah. And what's crazy to me is you're trying harder and doing everything you can. But you've said this before, and I've read it somewhere, where you were shooting once, or maybe more than once, and the cameramen would put their cameras down, or even worse, go sit in a car when it was your turn to go hit the rail. And when shit like that happens, what goes through your head? It's like, I'm doing everything I possibly can, and I'm still not getting respect?
Yeah, that was a bummer. That would really, really get me down. But my version of getting down was like, all right, I'm just going to do something that, like, I remember that happened when I was on this trip to Ontario, and like, I built the thing already, like, I'm ready, and like, they're just like chatting on the side and like, don't even have the camera out of the bag. And I was like, yeah, yo, I'm going to try switch front board. And they were like, looked at me like I was fucking crazy because no girl had even ever done a switch front board on film in the park before.
Right.
At that point. I mean, as far as I knew, and I was pretty like up to date on every single clip that had ever come out on Facebook at that point, or MySpace. And so I just dropped in and fucking switch front boarded almost the whole thing, and then slipped off and like tacoed the rail super bad. But they were like, holy shit, you're actually going to try switch front board, and like got the camera out of the bag. So I think like another thing was just to be so like crazy ambitious that people hopefully next time would have their camera out of the bag already and maybe even like help me shovel or whatever,
Yeah. I mean, do you ever call anybody out for that stuff, or is there a fear that you won't be invited back and you don't do that?
Yeah, I had. And I remember once I did get an argument with a filmer. This was like further in my career, and he was like, you're just pissed because you can't get any shots. Like, I remember him saying that, and I was like, fuck you, and the film came out and I wasn't in it. My whole part had gotten cut.
Oh,
I don't think it was necessarily because of that, but that was just like one time that I really did stand up for myself and be like, look, you're here getting paid to film us and me, and you obviously like think whatever I'm doing is lame, too lame to like you keep talking about how you film this pro and that out of a helicopter and whatnot. Like, good for fucking you. You're getting paid to be here to, like, I don't know, like I just kind of snapped,
Yeah, totally.
Looking back, that probably wasn't the best approach because, yeah, I was just too ready to like jump down people's throats, I think, because I was like tired of it,
Yeah. And I mean, you've seen it your whole career. So yeah, it kind of builds and builds and builds. What other blatant sexist shit have you had to deal with in your career?
I don't know, just like people on the team that are older, established pros, like trying to make out with me, like not trying like, hey, do you want to make out, but literally like leaning in for it and me being like, what the fuck, dude? Like shit like that. Or just, like hearing the team managers just talk shit about girls and how they're pro hoes and so sucked so and so's dick for whatever. And you're just kind of sitting there like, or they're talking about like all the chicks they've fucked and that are just like chunks of meat to them. And you're just like, oh, fuck, what am like, I don't know. Like, I think that really made me be like, yo, I'm going to act in a way that no one is ever going to say Jess sucked someone's dick in order to get on this team,
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to act in a way that no one's ever going to be like, this is a good victim for me to go try to make out with without asking them. And I think that's where that like really like get the fuck away from me vibe came from.
Is this because men are pigs and you experienced the worst of that?
Well, you just hear like, and they don't necessarily think you're like listening or they even notice that you're there at the fucking dinner, but you just hear how they talk about girls and you're like, oh, fuck. I wonder if they talk about me like that,
Yeah. Well, we're going to go back to Whistler. You've done your first season. You've filmed. You've gotten a ton of photos. And then you meet probably one of the most important people behind the scenes in snowboarding. You meet Blue Montgomery. He's the main dude at Capita. And how does it go from meeting Blue to getting on Capita, Nike, and Monster? Because it seems like that all happened pretty quickly. And it was like dreams come true in just a random meeting.
Yeah, so I actually, this dude that used to be from Silverstar, Mikey Scott, he was working at this distribution in Vancouver for Capita. Like the distribution was selling Capita and Union. And I was with a friend who was going there to pick up bindings. And I went along and was like, oh, hey, Mikey. And he's like, hey, do you have a board sponsor? And I was like, well, I was riding for this other brand forever, but they don't ever answer my emails or whatever. I don't know if I actually even ride for them still, And he's like, oh, do you want to try one of these Capita boards? And I was like, hell yeah. So I did. And I was like, this is sick. I love this. Like, I remember they had a girl in I forget what films it was. Maybe it was like Lauren Graham's Shot in the Dark films, Susie Davis, but she was like riding rails in Whistler and on a Capita. And I was like, oh my God, she's so cool. Like, yeah, this is like an alternative path I can take. And like that was in the winter. And then the summer, like all the Capita people came up, including Blue, to Whistler to ride the summer camp. And I like took some time off. Yeah, I was working masonry at the time and I like took some time off, a few days off work to go up there and do it and ride. And I was like, okay, I only have like 2 days off here. I haven't been able to get into COP all summer. Like that was the camp up there. And they brought a photographer. I'm going to fucking go off. So I did and got like, that was like with Brian Cassie, I think. We got like 10 really sick action shots that day, plus like a bunch of other stuff. And then Blue was there. And I think like because I was overcompensating so much because I was like, this is my only chance and only opening to even ride this summer potentially. And my only time someone's going to buy me a lift ticket to go up. Like, I think that like made an impression on him. And then whatever else I was doing that was dirtbag like he liked, I don't know.
He just saw how hungry you were? Yeah.
And so he gave me a ride home on his way to the airport. And I was like showing him all these pictures on my iPod Touch. I didn't have a fucking iPhone. And he's like, hey, what are you trying to do with your snowboarding? And I was like, I want to film the most fucked up video part ever that no one ever believes a girl can film. And he was like, okay. And then an opportunity came up, I think, like with Think Tank, who was like my favorite fucking movie of all. Like I had like every single trick, song, everything memorized from all their films. And Jesse Bertner hit me up one day being like, hey, Capita's looking for another rider to film with us. Would you be interested? If you want to, you have to be 100% in. Like, this can't be like it seemed like he almost thought maybe I would be like, yeah, maybe I'll be a bit in or something. Cause I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? I am in. I am more than in. I am fucking out my door right now, running down to your house in Seattle to look into your window and tell you I'm in. Like, I am in. And so that led to me filming that video part for Think Tank, the left brain, right brain, and getting opener and left brain. And my career just blew up from then because I did film that video part that nobody ever thought a girl could film.
Was the thought process with that video part, like, I'm going to go so hard, if I die, I die, that's fine, like I'll be the women's snowboarding martyr almost?
Yeah, if I die, I die. If I die, I am going to die trying something really fucking cool. Like I overcompensated so much on that first. Like I was going back, we were doing this wild card contest for the Uninvited, and so I was going back like looking through old emails from like 15 years ago, and I found that email with Jesse, and I started looking through other ones at the time because I used to like communicate with my friends via email because we didn't have text. It was just like, oh my gosh. So like I hit up Jim, and Jim doesn't have any work for me, and I applied here and there, and I just don't know, like I'm so fucked for money. Can I borrow $200? Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I was at a stage of like end stage desperation of like, I'm going to have to leave Whistler and declare bankruptcy and go on fucking welfare or whatever, like it was do or die at that point. And I had to work doing masonry stuff right up until I left on, I think, December 8th, and flew to Alaska and just like went off every day. I was like, I need to get like 5 shots today. Every spot, I can't just get one clip. I have to do like 5 tricks to make sure. And also like after forever of kind of being like left out of stuff or like had excuses like, oh, you're a girl, that's why we didn't put the clips in or whatever. I was like, I have to do stuff that undeniably will go in, even though I didn't know that the think tank dudes weren't like that.
So you're totally business boarding on this one, like getting shit done. And for this one, you get the 2010 Women's Rider of the Year, Women's Video Part of the Year, I think a Reader's Choice Award. You fucking killed it. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be remembered for just your awards. You're going to be remembered for being the woman who did everything she could do for other women. But now I have to talk about some really heavy shit. So while you're this tough chick who doesn't need a man, you eventually find your soulmate, Mark Dixon, and he was a rad dude, a sled neck that could have been a pro, but he lost an eye. He was like a soul rider, not one to post shit on the internet, not one to care about sponsors. He was about having a deeper purpose. And at a time when you were almost struggling with enjoying your success, did he almost push you to find your purpose in life? And what did that look like?
Yeah, he did. Mark was the coolest. Yeah, he was amazing. But yeah, he like shifted my perspective a bit because I think like I only saw 2 types of people before that. In my perspective, it was like the people who I was with trying to go pro snowboarding or were pro snowboarding. And then the people who like were just kind of weekend warriors and didn't care that much about it and weren't that talented, so they didn't care. But like he was super talented and could have done it. But he reminded me of why I was doing it in the first place. And it wasn't just like a mechanical job. And that's what it felt like at the time. It was just like, go out, go on these trips, get shots, come home, beat up and hate it and just be like, what is this even for? But he was like, you can do something else. You can do something to give back or something that brings it back to like a group meaning, And that first trip, I hit up Mary Rand because I was like, oh, this girl's killing it. She's from Rhode Island. Like, she's really sick at rails, and like hit her up and brought her on the trip. And that was kind of like a rough start of the Uninvited, of just being like, just bring up other people with you, And it wasn't like this was Mark's idea, but it was just like, he was just really, I didn't think that there was a way out at the time. I felt really trapped. And that's a crazy statement to make, but like being this pro snowboarder that everyone had expectations of, but all I was supposed to do was go out and do crazier and crazier stuff every year on film. And then that comes out and people forget about it 4 days later, and then you have to do it all over again. Like, what the fuck is this? What am I doing?
Yeah, totally. And while I could spend a whole podcast talking about what happened next, you losing Mark, everyone should watch your movie Learning to Drown to understand exactly what happened, as I don't want to make you relive this at all. And I will say I'm really, really sorry about your loss. And for a person that has dealt with depression for a long time, how do you deal with losing the most important person in your life?
I dealt with it badly. For a long time, I dealt with it really badly, whatever way I could. I don't know. I was just trying to survive, but not really trying to survive. I was just trying to not have to feel it all because it was like too much to feel. So I went down like a really dark road for a long time, for a couple of years. Yeah, like drinking and doing a lot of drugs and just trying to like numb myself from feeling it. And yeah, I eventually realized that I was going to die if I kept doing that, because I had some couple incidents that were really close calls and not, I don't know, like I was just like, if I'm gonna die, then I know what it feels like to be left behind. Like I didn't care about myself or my life really I didn't. I was like, this fucking sucks. But the burden, I guess, of knowing what it feels like to be left behind. Like, I'm in this situation because I've lost someone. I can't purposefully be a loss without trying, at least.
Yeah.
And I think in my head, I was like, also, like, if this doesn't work, then I know that I tried. But I did, and I started doing everything I could to try to, like, get out of that hole. And it took many years. And I don't know, I feel like I'm never going to be fully out of that hole. But I did have to stop, like, all of the self-destructive things that I was doing and face things a bit more, because I know, like, I know that Mark would not want me to ruin the rest of my life because of this, you know?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. One thing I noticed after I watched the movie was I noticed his chest tattoo. And did you get the same tattoo on your chest after he passed?
Okay, so he had Stay Gold tattooed on his knuckles, and his chest tattoo said, "Death is certain." And I never knew why. Like, I remember asking him, like, why. That's kind of like morbid, you know?
Yeah,
Like, why
really
did
morbid.
you get death is certain? He's like, I don't know, but it is. Like, so we never had like it's from this, it's a quote from this thing, or it's something I read here, or whatever. He just got fucking "death is certain" tattooed across his chest. Like, what the fuck? And so when he died, everyone, like all the friends and cousins and family and stuff, were getting Stay Gold tattoos. And I was like, I'm going to get where he put "death is certain." I'm going to get Stay Gold. So I got that, like, in the same style and basically like the same as he had.
So we're getting to a point where we're almost at something I call inappropriate questions, but we have to talk about the Uninvited very quickly. And can you describe what your vision was and is with the Uninvited and what we should look forward to?
Yeah, my vision was to use my position in the industry, my influence, my power, whatever you want to fucking call it, that I've built up over these years, to use it for something good and for something that matters and for something that makes me feel like it was all worth it. And I really wanted to just do what I could to prevent the same things that I went through happening to the girls that were coming up. And then also, like, seeing all the girls that I did come up with that were really talented and should have had support that didn't, and they just quit, and now they're fucking working at a coffee shop, you know? Like, I didn't want to see that. And so I just went kind of ham on that because I was in a position to be able to. I don't know.
Okay, cool. So we've got the Uninvited series. People can look all about that on the internet because there's a lot of stuff there. But we've been going for a long time, and while we could go longer, I know you have a day full of meetings, so it's now time for something that I call Inappropriate Questions. This is where I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. And I usually record the questions and then I play them to you. But this week, I was able to get one of the most influential writers in your life to email over the questions. So we're not going to have questions that I'm playing to you, but can you tell me how important Marie Francois is in your career?
Oh my God. She was my biggest inspiration when I actually got to a point of living in, like, before, when we were talking about inspiration, I was talking when I'm like at Silverstar and we didn't even have rails in the park yet, you know, but when I moved to Whistler, she was my absolute idol. And I half moved to Whistler hoping that I would just run into her at the grocery store. But yeah, those video parts that she filmed, like, For Any Means and No Correct Way, like, those are burnt in my head forever. I used to watch them and cry because I was so inspired and so grateful, and so just like, that just made me feel something, that she was like doing exactly what I dreamed I could do. And she had done it, and I could watch it as many times as I wanted, over and over, you know? So yeah, she is beyond hero status for me.
All right, well, here is her first inappropriate question for you. And I'll say the first 2 might not be that inappropriate, but the third one she comes through with. Her first question: Jess, first of all, I love and admire you so much for all that you've achieved and what you continue to bring to our community. I don't know anyone more giving than you. What is it that fuels that for you, and why is it important?
Well, first of all, I do know someone more giving than me, and it's her, because there's the riding part, there's the video part she filmed, there's the switchback 720s that she was doing fucking 15 years ago, but then there's also, like, the stuff that I've seen her do for her friends, or the generosity that she's had. Like, I remember she took all her friends and, like, the people that had helped her with her snowboarding career on a cat ski trip, and, like, it was like
I don't know, I say like $25,000 or something. And I was like, are you fucking crazy? She asked me to go and I didn't go because I ended up breaking my ankle, but different story. But like, she just said like, it always comes back. And I was like, how can you just give so openly? And she was like, and it wasn't like she was doing it so that it would come back, but it's just, she had a huge impact on me of like what kind of pro I could be and what I could do with my money if I made some one day. And I think there's that factor of like doing what I wish my people that I look up to would do, or like doing what I wish more people would do because I can do it. And then also probably like a big guilt factor. And I bet that's the same for her if you were to dig into it, feeling guilty for like the imbalance now of having this success and seeing all the people who are talented and hardworking and deserving, but they don't get it. And there's really nothing that I can do to get it for them except to give it to them or to give my time and effort and energy towards helping them get it. So I think it's like those two things.
All right, well, we will jump into question number 2. You've been through some serious hard times in your life. I know it's cheesy and you must get asked a lot, but from experience, what has helped you the most get through it?
Time, I think. Like when I was at that really low point, I remember just saying, keep existing. Like that's all you have to, there isn't that much you have to do today, but just exist until tomorrow. And I think part of that is just realizing on another level that like every moment is fleeting. And so like in the same way that that's negative, it's also every bad thing that's happening to you, every sad feeling, every bit of anxiety, every bout of depression, it actually does end at some point, even if it starts again the next day. Like nothing is forever. So just keep existing and circumstances are going to change. So yeah. I mean, I would say that to anyone who's going through a really fucked up time is just like keep existing.
All right. And we're going to go with our final inappropriate question. When did the dildo obsession start and what does it truly signify to you? LOL.
Oh my God. You know what? Oh my God. I just thought of something because this is like a crazy realization. Okay. So she's obviously my fucking hero and like, oh my God. And I don't know if this is where it came from. First of all, I think it's hilarious. Like it's so funny when they're flopping around or like throwing them at people or the ones with suction cups, like sticking them on people's stuff. And I think it's just like another thing of being like, in a weird way, like rebelling against all the like stereotypical bullshit of women's bodies that are put out there. And I just think it's funny to see a dong flopping around when stuck to someone's sled. But she had some crazy story that I remember I read in an interview or something where her roommates had put this giant dildo in her suitcase and like covered it in Vaseline and like to get it taken out in security. And I just thought that was so funny. It's just funny that she would ask me about my fucking dildo obsession. How about yours, mofo? You know?
There we go. She asked you about yours because I think you threw one into the crowd at the Trans World Awards one year, and some people thought it was funny, some people didn't. You know, that's all we need to talk about with dildos. That's Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And while you are one of the most inspiring snowboarders of our time, the way you leave it all out on the snow, for lack of a better term, there's something about watching someone ride the way that you do. But more importantly, you've had to battle through more than almost anyone that's been on the podcast. And while it's not a competition, it's truly incredible to see how you've been able to get shit done when you know more than most that life isn't fair. So it's such an interesting story that you've had. There's been such highs and lows. And I thank you for sharing it. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So that was time with Jess Kimura. And she has lived through so much trauma. And I'm just talking about the emotionally damaging shit she's been through. When you watch her riding, you'll see she's been through just as much physical trauma. And throughout the years, Jess has proven that she can take whatever life serves up to her. And while there's been a ton of success, there's also been a ton of heartbreak. And it makes me wonder, would I want to live her life? And every time I think about that, my answer is I doubt it. But that's me. And Jess has thrived through the turmoil, and she has to be one of the strongest people to ever join me on the podcast. And based on my hour and a half with her, she seems to be one of the coolest people to join the show as well. So that's the podcast. At this point, please review me wherever you listen. If I read your review on the podcast, you're going to win a prize. Also, please subscribe wherever you listen, and please support the incredible brands that make this thing happen. They are High Cascade Snowboard Camp, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.